We finally also got around to put in these fence posts to make the compound and therefore the cattle sorting facility more secure. The temporary solution with these metal fence posts is very weak because they only go in some 20 centimeters, while these wooden fence posts, they are in at least 50 centimeters, as deep as the auger can get. So the remaining step is now to move the fence, the wire mesh, and install it on the inside of these fence posts in order to make this complete. And another detail, so here we have that gate. That is one of two. There should be another gate on the other side of the easement, which would be here. And of course we need to modify a little bit this animal lane. The idea is that the animals are able to gather in this area here and then can also go in here, and we have a divider between the in and out section. So to the left it should be go through the chute and the whole facility, and to the right there would be an area that means go back to the countryside and go back to pasture. But we need to figure out how exactly to do this given the space restrictions that we have. This easement here is a little bit a pain, but we can work around this. Looks like the pigs have split into two groups, because these are not 14. They have grown bigger, which is due to the acorn diet that they are now fattening themselves on. I would think that the others went with the bovines somewhere up there. I will go there next. The sun is out, but only for a while. As you can see, there are clouds, and later tonight the rain starts. The forecast talks about the whole week and a few days of rain. We will see how that is going to look like. She saw me and is thinking that I might bring alfalfa pellets. And she's now looping around, and I would assume she wants to go where I have parked the car. No, it's not the case. She wants to go into there where there is some straw left. And also, I see they have not touched that new growth there from the seeds that came with the packages of straw. Everybody else also wants to go there. You can say that 5516 is the lead cow, if such a concept exists for bovines. I'm not really sure, but it might. In the case of horses, there's always the lead mare. Let me know if you know about this. This is actually a blind spot. I am interested in knowing. What you can see there is a pig running. Let's see. You might be able to spot the pig. Some of the pigs are up here together with the bovines, while the majority of the pigs are at the entrance of Zone C. So that's okay. They can spread and form subgroups, no problem. There are the two calves. Well, there actually. And you can see 3 more pigs munching on acorns. So what I can see is this area is now pretty much done. So this should now be closed. And they will go to a different area. So for this weekend we played it in an easier way on Friday before the guys left. we opened several of these poor places so that the bovine family can decide where to graze. Because when nothing is left, they will move on to the next place that is available. And that way it is a lot easier than try to be very, very, very diligent. There is not much to protect, so therefore the animal impact is more important and more valuable than trying to protect the little bit that grows. You can see a huge amount of sizzles that were not there the last time. So apparently the animal impact caused the sizzles to come up in order to make channels for the water to infiltrate. Nature knows her thing. And I see there is one pig over there, one over there, and there are 3 over here. So we have 5 up here, and the remainder until 14 are at the entrance. And as you can see, they are frantically looking for acorns. The faster I can find acorns, the more I can eat. And right now, they don't get any additional food. It is acorns and what else they find only. So the feedbacks that we have in the shed, we have not touched them since we moved them into Zone C. And that is how it's supposed to work. So the Iberian pig gets maintained over summer with something, and from November on it's acorns and other things only, until the acorns are no longer falling from the tree. And then it's either time to go to the slaughterhouse and be turned into ham, or they continue to be fed on feed. And in our case, we try to now produce our own feed by planting and having enough forage available, like the turnips, the daikon radish, and the cabbage, and what else we can plant and grow. It also includes the corn and other things. So this is a new way of doing things here. And we also hope to improve the soil by doing that. So for example, up here, this definitely needs to be changed. You can see all the stones and all that. So the idea is to get some water here for irrigation and then plant. So with more plants there will be more biomass, and with more biomass we improve the soil and at the same time create food for the animals. And that is the way to improve the whole land, zone by zone. And what you have seen in A7 is just the beginning. And our intention is to do this in more and more zones. Of course, not in order of the designators, but instead we look for a poor zone and then apply this method there. So in a video that I made a while ago, I may try to find it and link it here, that helps. I explained the concept of roles for each zone. So the zone can either be for pasture, and this is not for pasture here, it's too poor, or it can be for a crop. And if it's for a crop, it means feed for the animals, and at the same time we have living roots, and with some irrigation we can maintain those living roots over summer, and therefore the soil is armored against the sun, and that should help the soil life to survive the harsh sun. And that should then give us a boost to really be green all year around. The uprooting is also kept to a minimum. This one here just moves the soil a little bit around in order to find more acorns. So they look for acorns on the surface, they don't dig. Only in a few areas. And that is how it's supposed to be. This is not damaging the soil or destroying the pasture or something like that. So I like this. But then of course once we have 80 areas that are fenced in, then this will be different. But then we let them uproot on purpose in order to prepare the area for seeding. We are trying, as you can say that, in this way to reinvent the dehesa system. So instead of letting the animals roam freely on thousands of hectares, like in the past, where they had herders together with the animals, we try to build little zones, roughly 5,000 square meters each, and a system of animal paths in between. So that we have a lot of control over what grows where and who eats where or who uproots the soil where. And that way we can be very productive. At least that is my vision that I have. And hopefully this will turn out well over time. I don't expect this to be done in 2 years. This is an ongoing process. And therefore I'm not worried about our velocity of building all that system and the fencing for it. We just go at a pace that we can afford. But eventually we will have 80 zones, roughly, where we can play it this way. And of course now a purist would say, but how do you fatten the pigs on acorns? Yes, we do. We just give them access to zone after zone so that they can collect all the acorns that are available in a given zone. And these oak trees, those encinas, Quercus ilex beiota, they are sick in many cases. So my hope is that by improving the soil and therefore fighting the drought, we can keep them alive and help them to thrive, and therefore we get more acorns and bigger acorns. And therefore our pigs will then have access to a lot more of what makes the Iberian hem, the beiota, which means acorn. So this is a long-term plan in order to be more serious about the beiota of acorn. So I just did open this gate here. It's a makeshift gate. This will be a nice one when the time comes. And now they are in here. They will not find that much, but it's a little bit more than elsewhere. And some of the little ones, they are munching on that straw there. This used to be a fresh bale, and of course the rain and the sun did some damage to it, but it's still more or less in good shape, so it's fine for them. And there is some grass. If you look here in the foreground, it's a little bit in the shade and hard to see, but there is some forage available. So we basically have the whole herd in here. And I leave the other areas open so that they can wander around until tomorrow. They will then get access to a new place, and I believe it's going to be that one there. We have excluded this area here because there are young oak trees, and that was the most convenient way to protect them, because we could simply put this fence around it so they can now grow without being disturbed. The others that are somewhere in a paddock, like those over there, that is much harder, because they would need some individual physical protection, and yeah, this is another task on the long list. But it's important. We should protect these, because even those little trees, they are already several years old. Might even be 10 years or more. I'm not really sure. But it's definitely not something that you can plant and next year you have a little tree. This is not how these trees grow.
Allow me to introduce you to our shop. It is located at our website caimito.eu. One of the products is the world-famous Iberian ham. After preparation in the butcher shop, it is kept in a huge amount of salt for a while and then hung from the ceiling in climate-controlled ripening chambers for 3 to 5 years, depending on the size of the ham. People either buy a whole leg, which is between 6 and 10 kilos, or hand-cut slices that are vacuum sealed in 100-gram pouches. As you can see in many of our videos, our pigs fatten themselves on acorns running around the land. The acorns give the ham a very nutty flavor, and after you took a bite, that flavor stays in the mouth for a while, just like with a good wine.
So I just walked to this swale here in CT2 to show you the situation of the Paulownia trees. They have not lost their leaves completely, but you can see they have their feathers ruffled due to the frost and the generally lower temperatures now. But they're holding up much better than the other ones in the compound or in B1, because this area here is a little bit warmer. Apparently, no, it's not apparently, it's a fact. Colder air is always heavier and will go down, and as this is a slope, the cold air will rush down towards the compound, and right here the impact therefore is lower, or is less. And you can see in it close up that the ones up there are much more impacted than those that are a little bit protected and have the berm in the back. This one heats up during the day and then gives a little bit of warmth, and therefore the tree on the lower end is not so much affected by the temperature drop. So I would think. This little detail here is interesting. The tree split into several trunks, and now the water line is in between them. And that happened without us noticing it, because it grows so fast. So that means either that piece of plastic will be incorporated into the tree, or we need to cut it on both ends and remove it. These ones here are in much better shape. There is a lot of other trees around, and that seems to help them. So the idea of having a denser forest is definitely something we should try to achieve, because this creates a microclimate which is less cold. And here is more evidence for the theory. The tall one at the top is suffering from the cold, and below it's not. So there is something to it. And this one here to the left is certainly in very good shape. The leaves are big and have some strength to them. But at the top, again, you can clearly see that these leaves there have been affected by the cold. So I am thinking that we should place these Paulownia trees all over the place, intersperse them with the existing oak trees, and therefore have something that stays green. Well, the oak trees are also green in summer, but something that produces additional biomass and later on can be harvested and turned into wood chips. And they are supposed to regrow when you cut them down to the stump. So that seems to be a worthwhile activity. The only issue is, during the summer with no rainfall at all, and they being very small in the beginning, and therefore their roots cannot tap into any water that is deep below in the ground, we definitely need to have irrigation in place. So we cannot just say, okay, let's plant a few thousand of them all over the place, because most of them will simply die. So we need to do this step by step as the irrigation moves from place to place. And of course we need to think about how much water that needs. So it's more a wish than a plan, but I think it's worthwhile to pursue. But maybe that idea of digging another very huge pond in the back of our land, there was another video where I shared some thoughts, that maybe could help, because then we have an additional water source, and not everything hangs on the one and only well that we have at the outflow of the water reservoir, because this is not an endless supply. We use it because it gets replenished overnight every day, but this is not endless, and we can easily pump it dry. And also other things can happen. I mentioned and showed you that legal problem, and if you look very closely, also we have been smart to not highlight it by installing the panels right there where the well is. The well is clearly visible, and someone might have the idea that this cannot be a well. Also, it has been there for the same time as the fencing. So anything can happen, so we definitely need to create an alternative if something were to happen. So I think digging this other pond might be just that. So let's see if we can do this sometime next year during summer. And then we have water from both ends, and then we can definitely keep such Paulownia trees in many places alive by installing an additional water line. But it's a larger project. Not only thinking about the time, but also the money that this costs. But we will see. I would definitely love to have this in place. Also an update on this experimental patch here. As you can see, something is missing. Yesterday I took out the machete and cut down some of it. I shall continue or leave this to the guys. But the idea is to go in there and find Paulownia trees that might have survived. So those at the edge, they are okay. If you look carefully, you can find a little bit of it. Unfortunately, I managed to cut a little bit of the tree myself, but it is there and alive. It's right to the cut corn. But in there are a few. They are hard to spot, but I think here at the edge of the shade you might be able to see one. There is a little tree. Of course it has no leaves, but it's there and it's alive. So some of them have survived, but not all of them, because they have been shaded out. So this is definitely too thick if you have it like that. So what I'm thinking is next time we plant the Paulownias first, so that they can grow a little bit and be definitely on top. And then we throw in the same amount of seed for everything else. And therefore it is then also much easier to cut down the other material for mulch. When I was cutting with the machete, I tried to cut high instead of very low. So if I hit a tree, I will not completely kill it, only cut a little bit on top. And yeah, that seemed to be the right thing. So this will turn into soil now that it will get rained on. And then this patch will be a lot more fertile than it used to be. What is also interesting is that the sun hemp is alive, so it maintains its green color. Of course the leaves have done their job and have now started to fall off. But look there at the bottom. You can see this is definitely a live plant. So this can also be winter forage or autumn forage, or well, probably winter also. The corn definitely is now dry, so that means there are no nutrients for our bovines in there, so this needs to be harvested on time. But the sun hemp keeps up for a lot longer, so we should definitely have this in our mix, and maybe remove the corn from the mix, at least at the later stage. So we need to think. This experimental patch here has given a lot of information, and that is why I decided spontaneously to just throw out the seed that we have received here in this very small area. So I now have a visual of how things could look like, and we can use this now going forward.